Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today in Titletown Packers podcast. My name is Griffin. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at AllDayPackers. And I'm joined today by my co-host, Braun. No Mason today. Mason couldn't make the recording, but it's just me and Braun. Braun, how are you?
I'm doing good. You can follow me on Instagram at Lambo Leapers.
All right, sounds great. Today, we've got a good podcast today. We're going to be discussing a lot of things, including the Packers' NFC North victory over the Minnesota Vikings, clinching the NFC North Division title for the first time in 2 years. It feels good to be back on top. Ron, any short thoughts on being back on top of the NFC North?
It just feels good, and like the T-shirts say, the North is not enough, and we've got a lot of work to do.
No, it's definitely not. This team has bigger aspirations than just the NFC North for sure, but it's definitely amazing. If you went back before the season and told your then self that the Packers would be 12-3 right now, 5-0 against the NFC North and NFC North champions, I think I would have just passed out on the floor out of excitement because I had high expectations for this team, higher than the average NFL fan, I guess, but I could not. I had us going 10-6, and I thought that was pretty optimistic by me. So it just feels amazing to be back on top of the division. Vikings fans, Bears fans, they can all finally shut up because we're the best team in this division right now by far. And we're going to be talking all about that Vikings game from last Monday on this episode of the podcast. We're also going to be discussing next week's game against the Detroit Lions, which is meaningless for them, but has a lot on the line for the Green Bay Packers. But first, we have some news, as always. Running back Jamal Williams has been declared out for this Sunday against the aforementioned Detroit Lions. He's dealing with a shoulder injury that he suffered last Monday night. So, I mean, it could be great for Williams if the Packers can get things done against the Lions this Sunday, because he could get 2 weeks of rest this week and next week. If the Packers win, they do clinch a first-round bye. So I think that's going to be the case with a lot of players this week. If you're minorly injured, there's no point in really playing. Obviously, there is a point in playing. It is an important game, but it shouldn't be taken so seriously as we've already clinched the division and at least the number 3 seed. So there's no point in really risking anything major, especially with one of our key pieces on offense.
Yeah, and it's not just Williams. Fullback Dan Vitale is also listed as doubtful, so we're going to have to see what we can do in that backfield. It looks like Dexter Williams might get a chance to, play late here in the season for the first time, and another guy to look out for would be Tyler Ervin, who actually was incorporated in the offense last week, and he might see more time on the field this week as well. So we'll see what happens, but it's important to get those guys healthy for the playoffs, hopefully 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I mean, with Williams out, I'm sure Aaron Jones isn't going to be getting a ton of work, especially if we're up big entering the second half or third or fourth quarter or anything like that. So, yeah, I think it could be a pretty good week for Irvin. We saw him get sprinkled into some sets, some design plays for him actually last week, and I thought that was pretty exciting. He's obviously rejuvenated our entire punt return game, so it's pretty nice seeing the ball get in his hands. And our only other real piece of news is Aaron Rodgers' contract restructure. He has $14 million of roster bonus money in 2020 was converted to signing bonus money, which means the Packers can actually spread that out over the next 5 years. So according to Field Yates, the Packers actually opened up almost $11 million of cap space for 2020, which is obviously great because we spent a lot of money last offseason. So we were all kind of worried that the Packers maybe went it all in on one offseason, maybe with the big signings, obviously. But we actually do have a lot of money, and with some roster moves that could be expected, the Packers could be set up to have close to $40 million in cap space, which is awesome for a playoff team, a 12-3 team who might get a first round bye. You really don't see that too often, so that could be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. That kind of money doesn't come very often to teams that are contending and in the playoffs. So the ability to assess what we did this season and assess the personnel that we have right now and be able to come out and make moves this offseason with a lot of leeway, that's going to be important for Brian Gutekunst. And as Rodgers' career kind of winds down here, he's the age of 36 now. This is going to be important for Brian Gutekunst to manipulate the cap and get the players we need to go to the next level and win championships. Whether that starts with one this year and more next year and more to come, or we kind of have to assess what we did this year in the playoffs and move forward. So this is going to be an important offseason coming up, and we're going to have to see what we need in terms of, guys returning or guys we have to bring in from free agency and paying for draft picks as well. So that's an important move by Brian Gutekunst to kind of use the flexibility of the cap space that we have to get some more.
Yeah, and that roster bonus money being converted to signing bonus means that Aaron gets that money right now. So I'm sure he enjoys that. He and Danica Patrick just bought a house in Malibu, so it's really great for both sides. And yeah, like you were saying, this offseason could be potentially like we thought this offseason was the year Gutekunst went all in, put all his cards on the table. But I mean, next offseason, with you look at the money we could potentially have, and then you look at some of the available free agents, which are line up pretty well with the biggest holes on our roster. Last offseason may have been the start of a real hard push from Brian Gutekunst going all in on the next 3 to 5 years with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback.
Absolutely.
And then, you look at the roster. We have so many talented players in place right now. I mean, I don't want to look ahead to the offseason because the franchise tagging, we don't really know anything right now. But you look at some of these players and you just can't help but get excited when you think about them along with the players we already have on offense and defense.
Yeah, considering how we've been playing so far this year and our ability to win games with some of the personnel that we have that might lack, amongst the rest of the NFC, to be able to add guys to what we have going right now would be huge to the winning culture that Matt LaFleur has developed, that Brian Gutekunst has developed by the personnel that he's brought in. So, it's just exciting to think about, but we still got a lot of work to do with the group of guys we have now, and I'm excited about each and every one of the guys in that locker room, and I think we can accomplish a lot of great things in this coming playoffs.
Yeah, 100%. I've never really been this optimistic in quite some time. Obviously, look at the past 2 years. There wasn't much to be optimistic about, but I'm really feeling this squad right now. They look so locked in with each other. They look like a big family. I I think this team could do a lot of damage in the playoffs, and if they get a bye, they're only 2 wins away from the Super Bowl. So that's just so exciting to think about. But moving on with the news, we have Jake Kumaro is questionable for this Sunday with an illness. That feels like, I don't know what the illness is, but that feels like a player they would put out there. Unlike Williams, Kumaro isn't really a key part of this offense that we would absolutely need for the playoffs. Neither is Williams, but I think he provides more value to our offense than Kumaro does. So if he's on the edge this Sunday, I think that's a player they would put out on the field.
Yeah, and I doubt that they would have any hesitation sitting him if necessary as well. But it just depends on where he's at. This is something that just came up, I guess, yesterday, and this is something that he's kind of just beginning to deal with. So if it's an illness that kind of lasts into Sunday and it's getting progressively worse, then I doubt they put him out there. But if it could be just a little bug that he's dealing with, and maybe he's able to get through it before Sunday's game, and he'll be able to go out there. So we'll see what happens.
All right, and that is it for all the news we have today. So let's dive into the Vikings game. One of the best games, one of the most fun I've had watching a game in quite some time, partly because it was the Minnesota Vikings and partly because we played very well on both sides of the ball, minus the 3 turnovers, but we're going to get into that. Braun, any short thoughts on the victory last Monday?
Yeah, it might have been our most complete game of the year. It was exciting to watch us come together and after being down 10-9, 10-3 at one point, after being down and being able to come back and, kind of hold them scoreless for however many, quarters it was. It might have been almost 3 full quarters of football that they didn't put any points on the board with, the weapons they have and, that quarterback that they have. So it's very impressive by the defense, and the offense was able to get things going, at least on the, running the football. But, there's a lot of encouraging things, and there's a lot of things that you look at that we did. And, those are some things that if we can correct those things, we come out with a big win. And it's not just 24 points. It's not just 23 points. It's 40 points. So, we're just going to have to, make a couple corrections and keep doing what we're doing. We're getting hot at the right time, and we have a chance to really put some points on the board against the Lions this Sunday. But overall, I was very impressed with them.
Yeah, and you could kind of classify, I guess, this as a ugly win as we have the past 2 weeks, but I didn't come out of the game with the same feeling I had after the Redskins game, for example, because this is a a dogfight. This rivalry is supposed to be a dogfight. It's supposed to be ugly. We're in Minnesota, which is a terrible place to play in for the opposing team, and that defense is very stout on almost every level. So I wasn't unhappy with our offensive performance. I actually thought, like you said, it was our most complete game of the year. Our offense was moving the football. The 3 turnovers took a lot of points off the board, in my opinion, but we were moving the football pretty well throughout the game. And then defense, what can you say about them? They look amazing. That was the best game I've seen from the defense all year. Maybe the past 2 years, 3 seasons, if you go back far enough, just considering the competition and whatnot. But yeah, let's start with the offense. What stood out to you on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, the number one thing for me was how Matt LaFleur, that might have been his best game of the entire season. He just put together an impressive game plan from the start, and the plays he was dialing up were just perfect for every situation. And there wasn't one point where I questioned a play call that he had. Everything was near perfect throughout the entire game, and I was very impressed with his composure throughout that big, division rival game that really was for a division title. And just very impressive that he can come out and do that kind of, put that kind of game plan together and just call plays at a high level in a game of that magnitude. So very encouraging from him. And obviously Aaron Jones started off slow, and it looked like Jamal Williams might have his day. But when Jamal went out with an injury and Aaron Jones, came in and he got hot in the second half, and that's kind of how our offense, it went through him and Davante Adams, and that's kind of what we want to do. So I was very impressed with the offense's ability to overcome some injuries and able to still score points and play at a high level and move the ball with the help of Matt LaFleur and the rest of the guys.
Yeah, and Roger spoke on that after the game. He said that he was impressed with LaFleur's resiliency with the game plan. He never shied away from it. We've seen him kind of get away from it when things aren't working right in the past. So it was great to see him just stick with it. Aaron Jones never stopped getting touches. Neither did Davante Adams. They were both heavily featured this week. So yeah, that was pretty awesome from LaFleur. And I do agree. I think it was his best called game. He was dialing up some plays that were just awesome and perfect situationally. We converted a 2-point conversion. And I told you this during the game. Numerous times this season, I've said that I wish LaFleur had these money plays in his back pocket that he kept for these very important situations, like a 4th and 1 or a 2-point conversion when we really need it, or a goal line play, and when the second half or end of the game is approaching. And I feel like in every situation this year, it's been just a really basic staple concept from the offense, just a really basic call that the defense has prepared for. So the 2-point conversion, the Rodgers pass to Geronimo, that was a really neat play. And it's just great to see us succeed in those spots as we haven't this season. And it's great to see LaFleur kind of come into his own as a play caller and as a head coach.
Yeah, that 2-point conversion was very, very impressive because it worked to a T. You saw Geronimo, you knew it was going to go to Geronimo, and he schemed him open, and it was there, and he caught it, and it was perfect. And that was after that great Aaron Jones touchdown run. We needed it badly, and that was the point where we got up 17-10, and that's just right where we wanted to be. And our defense continued to play well for the rest of the game, and we were able to put another touchdown on the board. So, yeah, that was very impressive, and that's going to be one of the better plays of Matt LaFleur's season right there, that 2-point conversion. And we're going to look back on that as, it's not a very important play, but we're going to look back on that as one of his better play calls of the year.
Especially when you look at the fact that we've been so unsuccessful in those similar situations. Just to touch on Aaron Rodgers, I thought he was awesome. A lot of people were coming out of the game saying that he looked rough. It was like, oh, not a great game from 12, but I thought he did a pretty great job, other than the interception, which was weird. I mean, for 2 years now, we've seen him avoid all those like highly contested plays for the most part. So it was really weird to see him throw that ball when Harris is right there. Yeah, that was just a weird play, but it was a weird game early on for the entire offense. I mean, all our 3 best players were turning the ball over. So not too often we see that happen, but Rodgers, I think, got in a groove, and the most impressive thing to me was he's been targeting the middle. He was targeting the middle of the field more than I've seen him target the middle of the field in like 4 years. I swear to God. You look at like his heat maps. the next gen stats, they put out those heat maps after the game of where the ball was distributed, and for 2 years it was every single pass was outside the numbers. We almost completely ignored the middle of the field, and I thought that was a McCarthy issue, but it was also partly Aaron Rodgers, as we've seen that kind of leak into 2019 as well. But that had to be like the game plan or something, because he was throwing slants, he was throwing seam routes, he was throwing deep overs. It was incredible, and
He threw, yeah, he threw a lot of very contested balls, and he fit them through windows very often, and there was a lot of times where the guys just couldn't haul him in. But I thought he had a very good game. He was really slinging the ball, and he felt really good about where he was throwing it. And I mean, sometimes when he feels really good and he starts slinging it, he's been hitting Adams. Adams had 13 catches against the Vikings, so when he's hitting Adams left and right, and his guys are getting open and he feels good and his arm feels good, he's going to throw one and maybe, kind of before he thinks about it, before he takes a look, trusts his arm and just throws the football. And then Anthony Harris came up, and I guess he just didn't get a good look at him on that play. But, that's just sometimes what happens when he's really feeling well, and his arm looks good, and all that's going on. So, yeah, that was just one of those, that's actually the first non-tipped by a Packer, non-Packer touched interception in the last 2 years. So, yeah, but overall, I thought he played a really nice game, and it's not going to show up in the stat sheets, but if he continues to play at a high level, then we're going to be set for the coming playoff run.
I hadn't even thought of that maybe that interception was a good thing, because, I mean, a lot of Packer fans complain about his conservative nature as a quarterback, but, I mean, if that's just proof that he was trusting what he was seeing really well and just slinging it, I mean, if you give me one interception for however many great throws he makes, or however many great throws he can make with that mentality, I'll take it, because most of the time his mind is right and his arm is the best arm in NFL history, arguably.
Exactly.
It's not too often that he's gonna miss throws like that.
Yeah, you look at that interception, like even when he's like slinging it at his highest level, his MVP. I mean, this is a trend that we could consider. Like this could be an actual thought. And he has these MVP seasons, and he throws 7 interceptions. But maybe he is playing more conservative, and maybe that's why he's only got 2 picks, last year, and then 3 picks this year. Maybe it's just because he's been ultra conservative. But when he's like playing at his highest level is when he's slinging it all over the field, and that's kind of when he throws maybe 7 picks or 8 picks or 6 picks, as opposed to just 2 or 3. So yeah, I mean and that's when he has 40 touchdowns, 35 touchdowns as well. So I think there is a correlation there. And if he started, if that was a preview of that, Monday night, I think we have a few good things to come, especially with, the playoffs coming up. And we might see, a really nice game from Rodgers against the Lions here. And ideally, we'd like to get him out of the game as fast as possible if we can get to a nice lead early on. So, if he can come, play to that level, and play at a high level, I think that'd be ideal.
He looked a lot more decisive as well, I thought. He was definitely trusting what he was seeing and just letting it rip, because, I mean, look at the Redskins game or even the Bears game. I think the Redskins game is where it was at his worst, but he was ignoring open receivers, looking for the big play, which is something we saw a lot of in 2018. And obviously that didn't work out well most of the time. So maybe LaFleur sat him down and said, "Hey man, this offense works. You've seen it work. You've seen it work this season. Just stop doing that. Just trust what you see, and you've got the best arm in football. So just fire away at whatever you see and trust the offense that we will gain yardage and we will score. You don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to be Superman," which I thought he kind of needed that kind of talk last year. So it's great to see him over just 2 weeks kind of revert back to what we saw midseason against the Raiders and Chiefs and even Lions, where he's a great pocket passer. That's not what we know him as. That's what we kind of criticize other quarterbacks for being when we're defending Rodgers, because Rodgers is capable of so much more. But just when you sit him in the pocket and let him read the field, he's got the smartest football brain ever. Just let him read the field and just trust the offense. It's as simple as that. And I think his best games in the past 3-4 years have been when he just trusts what he sees, plays in rhythm of the offense, and it's really the quick passing game too, because we saw a lot of the quick passing against Minnesota. A lot of bubble screens, a lot of quick out routes, a lot of RPOs with Adams especially, and a lot of quick slants with Alan Lazard over the middle, as I said. So I think that's when Rodgers is at his best, and it's great that we're going to see more of that, hopefully, in the playoffs.
Yeah, and speaking of that offense, we're talking about we had 9 turnovers over the course of the season so far for this Vikings game, and then we put 3 balls in the hands of the Vikings on Monday night. So, and that's something that it's encouraging to me the way we won this game and had those turnovers because we have never won a game this year where we lost the football against the other team. So. It was encouraging that we were able to, hold the Vikings to 10 points and then also score 23 while putting the ball on the ground 3 times. So, if we can just go back to what we do best, and that's, kind of keeping the ball out of the other team's hands, if we do that accompanied with how we played against the Vikings, that's a recipe for success each and every week. And that's that small correction that I was talking about. That's something that you can go on the practice field and just kind of, drill those guys to hold on to the football, the 5 points of pressure on the football, and that's something that we can kind of make an easy correction and emphasize the ball a little more. And if we play at that same level that we played against the Vikings, that's encouraging for when we go down and play San Francisco or New Orleans, teams that take care of the ball well as well. So. Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I watched that football game.
Yeah, and one of the guys who put the ball on the ground was Aaron Jones, who had a pretty rough start. Like you said, I thought it was going to be a big Jamal Williams night, but Matt LaFleur never got away from Aaron Jones. He trusted in his players, and he kept giving him the ball, and he had a huge day, career high 154 rushing yards, along with 2 touchdowns, including that long 56 one to kind of the dagger play, to kind of put the dagger in the hearts of the Vikings. And it sealed the game pretty much, knowing how our defense was playing. And he had a stellar night, and I think that's the recipe for success for this offense is Aaron Rodgers distributing the ball at a high level, playing within the offense, and feeding the ball to Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and a little bit of Alan Lazard, that's what we saw on Monday night. It was the Jones and Adams primary weapons on offense, and sprinkle in some Alan Lazard, along with maybe some MVS, maybe some Kumaro, and a little bit of Graham too. So I think that's what this offense is shaped to do. I think you got to feature your playmakers as an offense. As if you're Matt LaFleur, if you're Aaron Rodgers, you want to get the ball in these guys' hands. And we saw a lot of featured plays for those 3 really from Matt LaFleur. And that just goes back to him and his great game, his great game plan, the short passing game to those 2 especially.
Yeah, and having a bunch of guys that you can rely on to make a couple plays each and every game, that just makes it more difficult for the opposing defense to game plan against because you really have to watch out for a bunch of different personnel groups on offense with different guys in each personnel group and obviously having 2 dynamic running backs when they're healthy. Danny Vitale, who can really line up as a wide receiver, he can, inline block and things like that. His ability to, Matt LaFleur's ability to use his personnel groups and use the players that within them, it's going to help us, going down the line here. Because of how versatile we can be on the offensive side of the football.
Do you think Alan Lazard is wide receiver number 2 right now?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty much it's him or Geronimo, and Alan Lazard makes more plays. So it's
Way
just
more
right
plays.
now you have to consider him that number 2 guy for us. But it's really at this point it's just the weapons we have. It's not really much of an order. It's who's hot in what game. Like sometimes it's every time it's Adams, but sometimes Geronimo gets hot. Whoever gets the ball and whoever wants to make the plays really is going to be that number 2 guy. When it comes down to it, each and every game it might change. So, but yeah, Lazard has been the most consistent of all those guys.
Yeah, I think as a game planner, Alan Lazard is the guy you should feature, the guy you should want to feature, because I think he's made the most of his opportunities so far. Including guys like Jake Kumaro, who Matt LaFleur implied that we'd see more of. We didn't really see more of him this week. And especially Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Geronimo Allison. Alan Lazard on the slant route, by the way, is unguardable. We ran it like 4 or 5 times, I swear. He's just corner.
He's 6'5", 240, that guy. I mean, he's gonna catch every time. He's gonna catch that every time, and nobody can guard against that.
Yeah, like Adams wins on the slant with footwork and his release, but Lazard will just box you out. He will get inside when he needs to, and he's going to catch the ball. He's got great hands. It's such a big window, too, for Rodgers, that big just put it right in the numbers, and it's worked out well so far.
It was successful 2 or 3 times on Monday night. Yeah, and it's not just Alan Lazard, playing well and Geronimo Allison, getting that 2 point conversion, but they're really buying in and blocking well, in the run game. And that was evident on Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He had a huge block on that 56-yard touchdown run by Aaron Jones. And Geronimo Allison had the block on the other one. And Lazard, he's been blocking well each and every week, obviously. So those guys are just, they're buying into their roles. They're doing their job each and every play, regardless of whether it's the number one hot read or just to block for Aaron Jones to get the touchdown. And MVS tweeted just after the game. He said, you never know when that guy's going to score, so you always got to play like he is. And you always got to block like he's got a chance to score. And he did on that 56-yard run. So, that's that same familial, mentality that this team has, that they want their guys to score and they're going to play it all for each other at a high level. So that's just, that's a huge part of the offense that's going to be crucial as we head towards the playoffs. And yeah, we talked about Aaron Jones, how he had a great game against the Vikings, and that has a lot to do with how the offensive line has played both in the run and pass protection. And Brian Bulaga, obviously, he's been dealing with injuries all year long, and he comes out and plays at a high level against Daniil Hunter, and that's his second great game against Hunter. A great pass rusher, one of the best in the NFL. And obviously David Bakhtiari, he had a great game as well against that monster on the outside, Everson Griffin. Obviously Corey Linsley and Bill Turner and Elton Jenkins continued their high level of play throughout the year. So our unit is really strong right now. And looking at some of the other NFC offensive lines, ours is up there with the best. And that's such an advantage as you go into these, deep stretches and important games. And it's very important that we have these guys up here blocking for Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones. So
David Bakhtiari, who was matched up most of the game with Everson Griffin, he played outstanding. He's really played outstanding the past few weeks. He kind of started the season a little shaky. He was still playing great, obviously. He was still one of the best left tackles in the league, but it wasn't really up to snuff with his other performances throughout his career, but he's really come on strong lately. And it's guys like that, guys like Kenny Clark, guys like Kevin King, who are really coming on strong right now, that are making our team so much better. And it's going to be tough when all these great players that we rely on are actually playing great like we expect them to. And David Bakhtiari included. He's been shutting guys out every single week.
Yeah, and to have those two bookend tackles on the sides of Rodgers, it's imperative, and we've had that. And I'm just looking forward to, our ability to do that against some of these better pass rushers that are, on the playoff teams that we're going to end up facing. But we're going to move on to the defense here and talk about their absolutely brilliant performance against a great Vikings offense who was missing Dalvin Cook, but, their run game and their pass game doesn't change really, because they're going to still, game plan to use Kirk Cousins and those two weapons on the outside just like they would any other week. And they did that, but they couldn't do it against our two, excellent corners that finally put together a game where they both played at an extremely high level, and that was when we needed it most. But what were your thoughts on the overall performance, Griff?
Well, for me, it starts with Za'Darius Smith, who I absolutely love, and he is so good. 3.5 sacks on Monday night. That's the best game he's played all season, and that's a pretty high bar too. So he played amazing every single play. He was crashing the backfield. He was making plays. 5 tackles for loss, I'm pretty sure, a number of quarterback hits, a number of quarterback pressures. He was just outstanding, and it's great to see him kind of convert those pressures into sacks, because his sack numbers are low, but he has the highest pressure rate in the NFL. I think he has the most quarterback hits in the NFL. So it's great to finally see him convert these pressures into sacks. And then you look at the secondary, they played outstanding. This was, as I said, the most complete game this defense has played all year, and it's because the pass rush was effective, the run defense was dominant, and the secondary played outstanding. Even on the Vikings' only touchdown of the game, Jair Alexander was just a step behind, not even a step, a half step behind Stephon Diggs, and it was a great throw and obviously a great catch. But those plays happen. Obviously, those guys get paid too, so it's nice to know that even on their only good play of the entire night, pretty much, we were still in perfect coverage. And then the run defense was great. As we all know, that's been a pretty big hole on our team this entire season. So It's great to see the run defense come together. Obviously, no Dalvin Cook helps, but that's still a pretty good offensive line, a run blocking offensive line in Minnesota. So it's great to see guys like Kenny Clark and Dean Lowry play really well in the run game, and Z Smith, of course, helps in that department as well. Yeah, just an outstanding game from the defense. The Vikings could not get anything going whatsoever.
You're right. They couldn't get anything going, and that includes the running game, the passing game, and everything in between. I mean, Kirk Cousins just he could not find any time to do anything. And on that beautiful interception by Kevin King, he bobbled it and then somehow caught it against his helmet with one hand. That was so impressive. And then that huge return set the offense up for that huge score. And that's what we need to do. We need to play complementary football. And the defense sure held up its end of the bargain on Monday night. And against a division rival like that in their own stadium to be able to do such a great job against that Vikings offense, it's so impressive. And that's a team that that has great players all around on that offense. And it was just impressive for our secondary and obviously our pass rush to just be able to shut them down like that and really keep them from scoring. Apart from, like you said, that half step. Stephon Diggs obviously is a great player and he does a good job against us every time we play them. But that half step lead on Jair was the only real difference between the two teams. And Jair played a great game besides that one play. So, like we said, the two corners, having the ability to play at a high level at the same time and shut down, the teams, whatever the team's two receivers that they want to go to are, that makes it difficult to pass the football. And then when they don't have a good running game going with Mike Boone as their guy against our really tough front, they just could not get anything on the board, and that proved evident in the score. They only got 10 points. So, just an unbelievable performance, and we need more performances like that, like we've had the past month plus. We need more like that as we move into the playoffs.
And those 10 points weren't easy for them either. I mean, they were both. Aaron Jones' fumble at the beginning, followed by a return by Eric Kendricks, pretty much gifted them 3 points. They gained 3 or 4 yards maybe on that opening possession, and they couldn't score, so they had to take the 3 points, which was handed to them on a silver platter. And then their only other score of the game, that touchdown to Diggs, was set up by an interception by Anthony Harris, which he returned pretty deep into Packers territory. So even their 2 scores were kind of gifted to them in a way. They could not get any yardage. How many total yards did they have? I know Kirk had less than 100-yard passing, but they could not move the football at all through the air or on the ground, which being a Packers fan, you don't really see that too often from opposing offenses, especially ones with Kirk Cousins, who's having a great season, and playmakers like Diggs and Thielen, who twice now this season, Jair and Kevin King have absolutely locked up -1 play from Stephon Diggs. It's upsetting because, these stats, you want to glorify them. Like, oh, look, they only held Diggs and Thielen to X number of yards, but those in both games, those have been inflated by fluke plays almost, that if Jair Alexander would just maybe turn his head around or put his hands up, going back to the Week 2 game, they'd be interceptions or pass deflections at least. But outside of just those 2 plays, those 2 couldn't get anything going. Thielen didn't have a catch. A wide receiver duo like that, to be able to lock the both of them down, accompanied by our pass rush, is just incredible. And I think if we meet the Vikings again in the playoffs, I'll be pretty optimistic, because that's not something you can just scheme around. I mean, Kevin King and Jair Alexander clearly are comfortable with guarding the two receivers, and then twice now our pass rush has been unstoppable.
We really just dominated them in every facet. I mean, we had over 250 more yards. We dominated them in the passing yard category, the rushing yard category. They only had 7 first downs. So, I mean, stopping a team like that is just it's just hard to do, and we did it in a tough place to play against a really tough team. So that's so encouraging for what we're going to do moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I touched on him earlier, but Zadarius Smith is an all-pro edge rusher. He is unbelievable. I love watching him every single week. He's my favorite player on the team, I'm pretty sure. I just love everything about him, and he He's so dominant. He requires everyone's attention on the offensive line. He's that kind of player now. It's not Kenny Clark. It's not Preston Smith. It's Za'Darius Smith, and he is unbelievable. Even with being double teamed more than any edge rusher in the league, he put up 3.5 sacks on Monday night, bringing his total on the season to, I believe, 14, or in that area at least. Uh, he's the best Packers defender since prime Clay Matthews, in my opinion. And what separates him from other players in the league, what makes him such a dominant force on our team, is that Mike Pettin lines him up everywhere. He's been doing that all season, but especially recently, as of late, he's been lining up kind of like a rover. Like he just walks around pre-snap and then hits whatever gap he needs to. And when you're drawing that attention to Za'Darius Smith, you don't know where he's coming from. It causes confusion with the quarterback and the offensive line, and it also gives one-on-one opportunities to guys like Preston Smith, guys like Kenny Clark, and Dean Lowry, who's really played well as well. Za'Darius Smith helps this entire defense, and it's not decreasing his statistical numbers either, because he's just one of the best defensive players in the football. He didn't make the Pro Bowl, which is stupid. But I think he will be an All-Pro, or at least a second-team All-Pro, because he is unbelievable. He really just increases the production across our entire front seven, across our entire pass rush, and when you accompany that with Jair and King and the whole secondary playing as well as they did on Monday night, and as well as we've seen them play since the 49ers game, probably, that's a pretty tough defense to go against.
Yeah, and that secondary really, like you said, they just shut down one of the league's better receivers in Adam Thielen. And, that was really Kevin King and Tramon Williams together, kind of just stopping him. And he didn't have a catch. So that was really one of the other impressive things that this defense did. But overall, just the ability to put Cousins under pressure. And, he just struggled mightily. And that was just, it was just great to see against a team that we needed to beat. So, but just overall, that was a great performance. And we're looking to do that, each and every week. And that was ideal. So, that was just really impressive.
Who, in your opinion, right now, are the 3 most important players on the defensive side of the ball? Just to go first, I would go, this is off the top of my head, by the way, but I would go Za'Darius Smith, Kenny Clark, and then Jair Alexander.
That's, that's a tough question, but you got to think like Za'Darius might be number 1, like you said, and then Kenny too. And then, that's tough to argue. I mean, Jair is really that guy in our secondary. He is that guy. And, you could say maybe Amos. After that, it's kind of tough. Preston would be that other guy that you think about. But you want to include a guy in the secondary in there, obviously, because they've been playing so well all year long. So, yeah, that's pretty much a perfect list. And they've been extremely valuable, obviously. And they've been a big part of our success on that side.
Yeah, Adrian Amos. Yeah, he's definitely up there. It's hard to judge him as a player because obviously he's not going to get a ton of interceptions or anything like that, but it is interesting to imagine what it'd be like if they took him out, because I imagine our pass defense would be much worse. I mean, you look at last season. So yeah, Amos, Jair, Z, Preston, and Kenny Clark, I think that's the real main focus group for the top 3.
Yeah, I mean, Amos is that safety blanket that, if you took him out, it would look very different. I mean, he is so important back there, and he just plays so soundly, and he plays at a high level. And you can always count on him to, be in the right spot and make the right play. So that's one of the more underrated signings, very valuable. We only signed him for $9 million per year, so that was just a great value signing, and he's been excellent for us.
Absolutely, and that about does it for our Vikings game recap. We're going to move on to this week's matchup against the Detroit Lions. Obviously, the stakes are high for the Packers and virtually nothing for the Detroit Lions. But Packers, all you got to do is win, and you get the 2 seed. All you got to do is win, plus a Seahawks win over the 49ers on Sunday night, and you get the 1 seed. Playoffs coming through Lambeau Field, so this is by no means a meaningless game. Matt LaFleur said he's treating this like a playoff game, which I don't know. I don't know how much I believe that. But, I mean, that's the mentality you want your head coach to have. And, yeah, it's a pretty important game for the Packers.
Yeah, this really is a playoff game because if you think about it, you're looking at an ability to beat the Lions and get a bye week rather than, if we lose to the Lions and, we're stuck at the 3 seed, we're going to be wishing that we obviously beat the Lions. And it really does, it saves us from elimination, really. It gives us a chance to skip a week of the playoffs. I mean, that's That's so valuable. And to do that would be, it put us in the final, the final 8 teams, uh, with a chance to win the Super Bowl. So I'd much rather come out, win this game, and we got to do whatever it takes to win this game because it's going to be very valuable. So we have to look at all the things that it takes to beat the Lions. And they're not a very impressive team, obviously. This is, a team led by David Blau, a third string quarterback, and it'll be the fifth quarterback backup that the Packers face this year. So, obviously they're not very impressive on the offensive side of the ball, but they've got some weapons. Really, they've got some weapons like Kerryon Johnson, this is gonna be his second game back, and Kenny Galladay, who's been impressive all year. We're gonna have to stop these guys, and you never know what happens. So this is a very important game, and it has a lot of stakes for us, and we're gonna have to come out and get the win.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, the Lions started 2-0-1 to start the year with Matthew Stafford at quarterback. So that means they've only won one game out of their past 12, which that just goes to show how poorly this team has played with Matthew Stafford going out.
Yeah, and it's not just Matthew Stafford that's banged up for them. They've got a lot of guys. They're missing 3 middle linebackers. Obviously their corners are banged up. They actually traded Quandre Diggs back, a few weeks back before the trade deadline. So they're not in a great spot at safety, and they're not a really healthy team. Mike Daniels has been dealing with injuries all year. So this is an overall banged up team, but I still think it's going to be a tough matchup, and it might be closer than we think. It's a division rival, and it's in their dome stadium. Obviously Detroit. So this is going to be one of those times. And another thing I think about is how Mason Crosby struggled last year in that stadium, and I hope he doesn't catch some kind of nerves or anything. Ideally, he makes his first kick and it's smooth sailing, but you just hope he doesn't kind of fall back into whatever he was feeling that day. And obviously, ideally we want to, I think we got to light it up early and often with Rodgers. Kind of, let him get into a groove, sling it around against a not so great defense. Obviously, if he's slinging it against, the Vikings that way, obviously it didn't come up on the stat sheet that day because that Vikings defense is very legitimate, especially that back end secondary. But against a team like the Detroit Lions with their secondary, I think it'd be ideal to kind of go with a similar game plan and let Rodgers kind of sling it all over the field. And ideally, we get out of the game with a huge lead and kind of take Rodgers out as soon as possible. I think if we can kind of seal a victory as soon as possible, I think it'd be best to get Rodgers out of there and just get ready for the playoffs, and we'll have a bye at that point hopefully. So that would be a great thing for us to let Tim Boyle get some action, and that'd be great. And we want to just get the job done quickly against a team that their quarterback's not great and they're dealing with injuries. So yeah, but I don't know. What do you think, Griff?
I agree completely. I think that should be the game plan, to just run up the score early so we can get those guys out of there as soon as possible. And I mean, if we do see a lot of backups playing, it'll be nice to look back on. The past 2 years, we've seen backups playing in this Week 17 game against Detroit because we were out of the playoffs. So it's just gonna be very nice for me, at least, to know that we're playing backups now because we're 13-3 and have the first round bye in the playoffs, not because we suck and we need to overhaul this entire roster going into the offseason.
Yeah, that feeling is so defeating. As a head coach, putting in like your backups because there's no point in our starters playing. That's just that's such a loser's mentality to me. And when I watch that, the last 2 seasons, it's just very disappointing. But the ability to do that with a playoff spot locked up and a prime playoff spot locked up, that would be so nice. And it just feels so good to be able to win football games again and to have 12 of them under our belt now, and the North back in our hands. It's just an incredible feeling.
Yeah, and if we can win this Sunday, I think that would actually be our 100th win all time over the Detroit Lions, which is, we haven't always owned the Bears. We obviously haven't recently owned the Vikings, but we will forever own the Detroit Lions.
I take solace in that every day.
Yes, and with a win, we would also be 6-0 against the NFC North, which we haven't done since 2011 when we went 15-1. So going 6-0 against this group of teams that I know Packer fans just hate so much, that would just be so pleasing, especially since their fans were running their mouths this entire offseason. That would be amazing.
Yes. So, what are you looking at stylistically in terms of our offensive matchup with their defense? I mean, obviously, the thing I look to is Devontae Adams versus Darius Slay. You know they're going to put him all over Adams, but Devontae has never really had a huge problem with Slay. It might be his most challenging matchup throughout the that division rival those corners that we face in the division. But I still think Adams really has the advantage most every time. So. Uh, that's the one I look towards, and then obviously if Mike Daniels is active, Aaron Jones, going up against that front. They've got some great players up there. Flowers, like we said, Mike Daniels, some other guys inside, Deshaun Hand. So uh, it's going to be very interesting to see some of those matchups. But I'd like to just see Rodgers throw it all over them, and hopefully we can get out of there quick, and Rodgers has a great day.
Yeah, Devontae Adams definitely has Darius Slay and Xavier Rhodes numbers. He's faced them a million times. So, and it feels like every single time these two teams play that Adams always wins those matchups. And he actually didn't play week 6. He was out with a turf toe injury. So it'll be nice to finally get to see him and Slay go at it. But yeah, Aaron Jones definitely, because he is only 16 yards away from a 1,000-yard season, and he's only 2 touchdowns away from breaking Amon Green's record impact or franchise record for most touchdowns from scrimmage in a season. So if he gets 17 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, and that means we've at least scored 14. So just give him that and get him out of the game. That's all I want. I know he kind of downplayed that earlier today, but I'm sure that's all he wants too, just to know that you got to 1,000 yards for the first time in his career, and he broke that all-time Packers record, which would just be astonishing. Really, that just speaks to the how well he's played this season. He's been the heart and soul of our offense. He leads the league in rushing touchdowns. And Zach Cruz actually tweeted this earlier today that he's only playing 59.4% of snaps of the entire offense. So he's at 19 touchdowns right now. 19 touchdowns when you're only playing 59% of snaps. That is just insane. He's so efficient. He's so productive. And we've known that, and he's finally breaking out this season. It's just awesome to see.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get Jones that 20 touchdowns. It'd be nice to get him to 1,000 yards. It'd be nice to get Adams to 1,000 yards, and we can do that this week for sure. And that'd just be nice because people talk about our offensive production and things like that, and that's just like a nice number to have on paper in terms of looking back on their season. To say Adams got 1,000 and Jones got 1,020 touchdowns, that's a remarkable year. I mean, Aaron Jones has done so much, and he really, like you said, he hasn't played consistently like 90% of the snaps every game or anything like that. It really is a dual backfield threat with him and Jamal, and Dan Vitale as well is in there by himself a lot of times. So it's quite remarkable really, and just 20 touchdowns is such an astronomical number. So very impressive, and if he can get to that, it'd be a huge mark for his career and for the history of the Green Bay Packers.
I'd be interested to see his yards per snap compared to other running backs in the league because it's got to be up there for sure. 59%. No other elite running back plays that little. No one else is playing in a 2 running back backfield really anymore. So I would be interested. I don't have that stat on hand, obviously, but it's got to be up there. He is just so efficient. It feels like every time he touches the ball, he creates positive yards. He does something that another running back wouldn't be able to do. Like we've seen that a million times this season where he's kind of caught for -2 or -3 and somehow he gets out of it and gains 3 or 4 yards on the play. He's just a remarkable player, and it's like I said, it's just great to see him finally get that name recognition, finally have that breakout season that we've all been waiting for. And Devontae Adams, he only needs like 80 something yards, I think, to get to 1,000. So that'd be great for him. Aaron, I think, needs 360 something to get to 4,000 on the season. So those are just some milestones to keep in mind. I doubt Aaron gets to 300 something, but Jones and Adams, Jones is almost definitely, but Adams, there's a pretty good chance for that too, seeing his track record against the Lions.
Yeah, and in terms of the defensive side of the ball, we talked about Kenny Galladay, and his just he's an impact player for them, regardless if he's throwing the football, and that's the remarkable thing about him as a player. But Jair and Kevin King are going to have to do a nice job to shut him down, and hopefully they can do that for us. and continue to do what they've done for the past multiple weeks now, and that's hold teams really consistently under 20 points and let the Packers offense do its job and win football games as a whole. Uh, and that starts with our pass rush and obviously our guys on the secondary. So, uh, Griff, is there any matchup in particular that you look at and you know are interested in watching this Sunday?
I mean, those are so unpredictable, but I mean, Jair versus Galladay or King versus Galladay. I think Jones is injured, so I mean that's really their only threat in the passing game. Kerryon Johnson is a player to look out for, I guess, but at the end of the day, maybe this is stupid of me, but I'm not very worried about the Lions' offense. They're one of the worst offenses in the league with David Blau at quarterback, so uh, I'm more focused on our offense, admittedly, but obviously a good defensive performance would be very nice because that'd be what 5 in a row, maybe 6 in a row from the defense. Great performances, even though most of those were against incompetent offenses, but that'd be nice for their momentum, I guess. But yeah, let's look at the playoff scenarios this week. Braun, I know you love those playoff scenarios. He's always on the playoff machine. What do you got for us?
Well, this Sunday's win is imperative because we get that, and we're looking at a first round bye locked up, secured, and that's really what we're battling for this Sunday at 12 o'clock. Uh, but the thing that is going to really be interesting is the Packers' ability to get the number one overall seed in the NFC, and that the only way we do that is with a Seahawks win over the 49ers, and that's going to be the tough part. And let's talk about the Seahawks for a minute because after their loss against the Cardinals last week, they lost some guys to injury as well, and that was a tough week for them. That was really a very disappointing week as they get towards the playoffs, and that was very disconcerting for them. And a little jolt that they got this week was when they re-signed a fan favorite of old, Marshawn Lynch, the running back, and Robert Turbin as well. So they've got familiar faces in there, uh, and we don't know how well they'll play, but that's important uh, for them to really contend with a 49er team that is going to be tough to beat. It is in Seattle, this matchup, so that's good for the Packers, but uh, I'm not sure how well they'll do against this team. They lost Dwayne Brown. I mentioned another injury that they had. So they're really thin at running back right now. They've got a very old, we don't know how well he's going to play guy in there, and behind an offensive line that's banged up and not great in the first place. So Russell Wilson's really going to have to put the game on his shoulders like he did in their previous matchup, which he won. So, yeah, that's what has to happen for the Packers to get that number one overall seed. But regardless of that game, they should get that number two spot, maybe the number one, locked up if they beat the Detroit Lions this Sunday. So, yeah, and if they somehow lose that game, we're going to be relegated to the 3 seed. So, unless the New Orleans Saints lose to the Carolina Panthers, but those are unlikely scenarios. So, yeah, but that's gonna do it on the playoff scenarios. Not too much, not too many complicated factors in what's got to happen, but it's pretty simple. Green Bay wins, and we've got a bye, so that's all we need to worry about.
I'm so excited for that Sunday night game, Seattle and San Fran. The only reason that game means anything is because of our boy Brett Hundley stepping in for an injured Kyler Murray last week, and he played well enough to get the win, I guess. Uh, it was it was great to see Brett Hundley helping out the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we forgot to mention, but he really did play great, and he ran the ball. Similar to what Kyler Murray does for them in Arizona. And what he's done really well is his ability to use his legs, and you saw that when he backed up Russell Wilson for a year or two, and obviously he came here, and that's what coaches who bring him in, that's what their desire is, to get a guy who can kind of fill what the void would be if that guy were to go down, and he did that to a T, uh, with his legs and with his arm. So very impressive by him, and it was important for him to do that for the Green Bay Packers. And nice to see him get that job done there. And yeah, that keeping the Packers hope for that number one seed alive, and very exciting stuff. And well, we've got a lot of hope going into these playoff pictures and things of that nature. And it's going to be exciting moving forward.
Absolutely. And that is going to do it for this podcast. We'd like to thank you for listening. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. We'll be back next week, hopefully after a Packers win, hopefully after a Seahawks win, hopefully talking about a wild card weekend in which the Packers aren't playing. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week. Go Pack Go.